Can I hear a good UAW good afternoon? All right, thank you. My name is Gary Pollard. I'm the chair of the board here at Wayne State University. Just for your own edification, I am out of Local 600, worked in the Dearborn Assembly. I would like to, first of all, thank President Dennis Williams for being here and lending us his presence. Let's give him a hand. We also would like to thank Dr. Masters, Merrick Masters. Let's give him a hand as well. We have, in addition, on the panel today, besides Dr. Masters and President Williams, we also have my colleague on the board and the vice chair in my right hand, Governor Paul Massaran. Let's give him a hand. Again, thank you. This is our 6th annual Labor Forum. Our last panelist I'm going to introduce because she is our provost here at Wayne State University, and that is Margaret Winters. Let's give her a hand. I'm sure we're going to have some healthy discussion here this afternoon, and as we get rolled out, let me first let Margaret say a few words. Margaret, please.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to stand over on the side because otherwise I don't think I'm visible, even on tiptoes. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today, guests on the platform, and all of you. I can't think of a better place than Wayne State University for a labor conference and a leadership in labor conference. We have a proud history of labor relations at the university. And we also have, of course, the Reuther Archive. So we are, at the same time, practicing good labor relations. I like to think that, on the whole, it is very well done. And also, we are a center for the history of labor relations. So the academic side and the application or practice. I was lucky enough to speak last month or earlier this month at the Hunter College Center for Collective Bargaining in Higher Education. And I was thinking as I walked over here that that's a good conference, but this one, of course, encompasses so much more. And it's so important that people continue to study, to speak about labor relations, and to make progress in it. So I welcome you all. I'll have to end by apologizing. I have several appointments this afternoon starting in a few minutes and cannot stay, but I wish you a really good afternoon and great enjoyment out of this conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Merrick Masters. I'm Director of Labor at Wayne, and I would like to join my colleagues in welcoming you to Wayne State University this afternoon. This is the 6th annual Labor Leaders on Labor Forum. Each year we honor a distinguished labor leader. Today we honor a great leader and a great union. Dennis Williams has devoted his life serving others. He served in the Marine Corps. He joined the United Auto Workers in 1977 and served in a succession of leadership roles, from a member of a bargaining committee and its chair to an international representative to director of organization to Region 4 director to secretary-treasurer and now as president. In these leadership positions, Dennis Williams has fought many hard battles on behalf of working men and women, to organize workers, to get better contracts, to protect rights in the workplace, and to promote social and economic justice. Dennis Williams is a genuine leader. They say that good managers are known for doing things right, and we certainly know that we could use more good managers. Leaders, however, are known for having a vision and executing it. They are known for doing the right things. Dennis Williams has demonstrated this time and again, and nowhere was it more vividly displayed than in his handling of the challenging negotiations that culminated last fall with the Detroit Three. And I think that we all owe him and his UAW colleagues who are here today and their General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford counterparts a round of applause. What they did obviously did not come easy. The UAW is much more than an organization. It is a movement. It is one that has given so much to the betterment of America. At Wayne State, it occupies a special place. As Margaret mentioned, it has built the Reuther Library, which is the crown jewel of labor archives in America. It made possible the creation of the Douglas Fraser Center for Workplace Issues, which I have the honor of directing. It donated WDET-FM, and it contributed mountains of amounts of money and so much more through its generosity to the university. We owe the United Auto Workers, its leaders and its members, a vast debt of gratitude, and I thank them. The United Auto Workers, Detroit, and Wayne State University are joined in heart, mind, and soul. Almost 41 years ago, in dedicating the Reuther Library on this campus, the late Vice President and then Senator Hubert Humphrey in this very auditorium said, and I quote, "In the minds of many of us, Walter Reuther, Detroit, the United Auto Workers, and Wayne State University are all intimately interwoven. This is Walter's school, Walter's home, Walter's community, Walter's people, and the battleground for so many of Walter's greatest triumphs." I hope, too, that Wayne State feels like home to you, President Williams. Without further ado, I introduce you to our distinguished honoree, President Dennis Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate it. I want to thank Professor Masters and everybody for this special day. You know, when I was listening about Wayne State, I was thinking about the long connection between the UAW and Wayne and how many leadership who have developed through the institution itself and how important it is to all of us in labor and business, because it is about that understanding of one another, the stress of life in general, and the global economy and the pressures and the relationships you build with the knowledge and understanding really brings you to the point of where you're going in the future. So the commitment from the UAW is longstanding and is long-lasting and will always be there with Wayne State University. I was listening to the remarks and thinking about that road to leadership and that road to through being an organizer and local union leadership and international representative servicing in the field, or that assistant director in the region, or that director of a region, to come into Detroit in 2010 as the secretary treasurer and now president of the UAW. It has been a road that has taught me many things and taught us as organization through many leadership about the struggles that individuals have in organizing, or the workers have on the floor with not only their work life but their family life. The idea of leadership is not easy, and it's awful difficult, and it's often full of challenges and gathering people around you to get different thoughts or different views so that you can make the best decision for your membership, the institution, and the community that you serve. So when we talk about negotiations and the struggles that we had and the pressures we had, you have to put a lot of thought into it. And what the whole, I guess I would say, atmosphere was. We had a membership who had pressures on them through concession bargaining in 2006, 2007, then 2009. We had a membership that had shrunk, and then all of a sudden we had massive growth where we had 43% of new hired people at Chrysler, 28% at Ford, and 19% at General Motors. And I think that when I look back on bargaining and we were setting our goals, there was not ever a thought not to bridge that gap. It was how you start and how you begin and how you end, and are you set up for the next round of negotiations to continue to succeed for your members. So I think just to be, and I have a canned speech that was remarkable, by the way, but I don't think that I ought to use it in this forum. I think it's the fact that people really need to know, because you're learning about labor relations and you're learning about leadership. And when you're doing that, you have to understand that you may have a thought, but so does everybody else. And so we went into bargaining really focused on bridging the gap. And what happened at Chrysler, while everybody agrees that there was a lot of controversy, but there was a lot of things that we had not ever experienced before that we were experiencing. I'm one of those leaders who believe in debate. I believe in that conversation that you have with the membership. One of them people who think that you have to have 1,000 hours of discussion with your counterparts in the corporation to develop a relationship of respect. So when we went to bargaining and the first contract was turned down, I think it was really interesting because we weren't able to get our message out. We weren't able to get enough discussion going so that members had a real answer to what was going on in the collective bargaining agreement. And one of the reasons were we weren't prepared for the social media. And I think it was a real experience for us to deal with social media because we knew that our members had dialogue on social media. We have had dialogue with our members, but we never thought about outside groups attacking us the way they were attacking us. And so we had to deal with that, and we weren't prepared for that. So we hired an outside group to help us with social media to communicate the messages that we were trying to achieve with our membership. So we got to thinking about this, and as we went through the next contract, or with Chrysler. It was interesting to find out how much we had learned from the first one. The fact that today, and my grandkids teach me that I'm aware now what they're doing. They want to answer right now. And so does our members. So we're trying to figure out, how do you communicate in time, on time? You know, and it's not easy. So as we were negotiating the agreement with FCA, we learned a great deal about our members and how they communicate today, and how we still wanted to communicate like yesterday. And so we are making that transition. In doing so, that we had a lot of pressures. We had a membership, a legacy membership that we referred to them as legacy, that had stagnated their wages for many, many years. The corporations, as we went through 2009, and we were able to, both the companies and the union was able to get President Obama to give us some bridge loans, and we had to invest a lot of money into the plants in order to create new products to have General Motors and Chrysler become the companies they are today. So that was all about investment from 2010 to 2014. But in the meantime, our members had told us at the bargaining convention, and the corporations knew that there was a great deal of pressure to reinstate some benefits, reinstate the wage increases. But at the same time, we had 43% new hired people in Chrysler that had a wage, I believe, and going by memory, $15.48 to $19.28 an hour over a 4-year period. And we know that wasn't sustainable. We always knew that we believed that two-tier was not sustainable. And so we knew we had to do something about it. And the way we were going to work with it was to bridge the gap. Why bridge the gap? For our members, it was instance. Why not to the top? And we had that great debate at our convention and discussion at our convention. And I found it interesting because we have still the pressures of a global economy. We still have the pressures of transnational plants here in the United States being non-union at a lower wage, and with about anywhere from a 20% to a 43% temporary employment within the facilities. And the word that our members hated the most, and probably still do, is the word compete. But we do have to compete. So the reason we started off at $17 and grows to the $30 over an 8-year period is so that our members, over time, get the expertise to become more productive. At the same time, we were able to blend the rate in order to compete. Not what I consider the most ideal thing to do. The ideal thing to do is to have 100% of the auto industry organized like we did in 1980. You know, that is ideal. The ideal is to have a national health care system where people got health care through other ways other than just corporations and unions negotiating the benefit. We call it a national health care system. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but the fact is we still think it is as important today as it was yesterday. These things are all real pressures. The fact that China is a global market and we want to export, in order to export there's many pressures because China has this where you have to be a partner in order to produce product. And you have Japan who has what they say, we don't have any tariffs, but they sure make it miserable for you to import. So these are real pressures that the UAW, regardless if we like it or not, have to deal with. In the reality, these pressures are not going to go away overnight. They exist, and they exist today. So as we bargained these contracts, it was in mind to not only bridge the gap, restore benefits, but it was also how do we compete in the future in years to come. Now, I've been very critical of corporations about always talking about the 7% of labor. That's what it costs a vehicle, 7% is labor. So I always challenge the companies not to be nasty about it, but what about the other 93%? And what I mean by that is I want to challenge corporations to look at things like engineering techniques, processes, commonality of parts, producing vehicles where you have a common platform and you have one windshield wiper, not 20. Become more competitive like other corporations do. Why is it that Japanese companies can make this amount of money on cars, but yet we as labor in corporations can't engineer so they can too? Rather than shift the work to Mexico. And it isn't that we don't know that they have challenges, but you got to ask yourself, and I've always asked the corporations, so I'm not hitting them here in the nose without them knowing, how much profit do you need at the expense of the American worker and our country? And I will be less than honest not to say that I think that General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler are credible companies. And we have a good working relationship on 90% of the things we do. And when you look at the margin of differences between what their goals are and what our goals are, they're probably the same 10%. We want companies to make money. We want companies to be able to compete not only here in the United States, but globally. We want them to be successful because we know as they succeed, so does the people we represent. And it's through wages, profit sharing, health care is maintained when they succeed. I remember watching a video, in fact, I showed it at the Barton Convention in 1956, Walter Reuther sitting down with one of the media networks, and they were challenging him on why does he think workers ought to get profit sharing. 1956. And we achieved it in 2002, I think it was. We started profit sharing, and today our members are receiving a very good profit sharing check. As long as the company does well, our members will do well. But the difference is that a lot of the corporation's philosophy was keep the wages low, and profit sharing will make up the difference. Our philosophy is that workers have to be part of the middle class, and their wages ought to be what they are today. I don't want to commit to where I want them to go in the future. And then reward the employees with profit sharing as the company does well. Two different philosophies, but not this wide, it's this wide. So you work with that and you see what we're doing. Labor, I think that this contract, more than anything, demonstrated the democracy of a union. When our members were voting down the contract, many people thought that what we were going to do is sit back and then bring the same contract and said, you got to vote for this. But what it demonstrated when I said, and I probably not verbatim, that we do not consider this a setback, but part of the process, is because the design of the Constitution of the UAW, this is the process. Our members have the right to debate. Our members have a right to reject a collective bargaining agreement, and we have the obligation to go discuss it with them and try to find the common ground to achieve an agreement. That's democracy. And if the unions don't demonstrate that democracy, who will? So, in a lot of ways, the frustrations of the corporations and the frustrations of our bargainers were real because it was difficult. For us, I think it was a great learning experience to our members and to us, and remind us that we are a democracy and a democratic union, and our members do have a voice in the workplace. And it just demonstrated to not only our members, many of our members, that we are a union that believes in the Constitution, that believes our members have a right to reject or debate. But more importantly, it taught us how we need to communicate with our members, and we're doing that better all the time. In fact, we're working right now on so our members can get an app, UAW app, on-time delivery of messages. And by the way, it'll be open to the public. But it was interesting that after our bargaining, we had emails, phone calls, letters from Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Kia, for the first time in many, many years, because they seen what was going on, and they too recognized they want a voice in the workplace as well. So we're down there organizing them right now for the first time in many, many years. When you look at bargaining in 2015 and the pressures that the corporations have and the pressures that we have, there's not, we always remember that one of our sole purposes and what our collective bargaining agreements provide with the employers is real job security. But job security is measured on not by words, but on action. Whether or not a corporation can sell the vehicles they design and that we build, and we have an American public or a world that really wants these vehicles. That's job security. Now you can say, and we do, that you can't outsource in our contracts. We think that's one of the most important provisions of a labor agreement. But we also believe that it puts pressures on the companies to be more creative in their processes and also their sourcing decisions. And it puts pressures on us to build a high-quality vehicle. And we emphasize quality. And we get aggravated as much as the corporations do when we have recalls. And a lot of our recalls are supplier-driven. So everybody says, well, we should be mad at the supplier. No. Corporations and labor organizations ought to work with suppliers to help them to get the processes and the quality so that our OEMs make the quality parts without the cost of warranties and the costs of recalls. That's job security. Working together to do that. Health and safety. Too many fatalities this year already, or last year and this year. That's unacceptable to us as an organization. It's unacceptable to any corporation. So we have to do a better job in our health and safety. When you look at the non-union competition and the transplants, and you wonder about the inequity in this country, and you look at where we were in 1970s and 1980s, where people were really living the dream of the middle class. We had about 90% of the market. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. 90%. Oldsmobile, I can name a lot of them. Pontiac, AMC, now I'm going back to my age. But when you think about that, America was rising. Institutions like Wayne State had the money from the states because we had employment. Today, we have a lot less plants in the UAW, a lot less plants in Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors here in North America, United States. But we're producing the same amount of vehicles that we did 15 years ago. our productivity is about 10% higher than it was 10 years ago. But yet, in this country, the inequity is growing larger. Poverty is rising. I think there's 45 million, a little over 45 million in poverty today. So you got to ask yourself, where are we going as a country and what commitment we really have as a society? We have a lot of discussion about when companies invest in Mexico or somewhere else. Some of it pretty lively. But when you look at transnational plants like Nissan, Toyota, Honda, Kia, Hyundai, BMW, Volkswagen, when you look at them and their wages are a lot lower than what we have in the UAW, you understand why people are struggling today and why the inequity in this country is a real problem. And you can connect the dots between organized facilities and non-organized facilities. It's a real problem. It's a real struggle. And when you look at Mexico and why we are so angry and we're fighting the president who we align ourselves 99% of the time on for TPP. It's not just about TPP, it's about NAFTA as well. How can you go into another trade agreement that has all these flaws and all these side agreements and all these things that we know that don't work because we tried them in NAFTA without fixing NAFTA first? And our argument has been, look, Mr. President, focus on NAFTA. Mexico is a huge problem. It's not an economy of scale. It is a dumping ground for these auto companies, and I just don't want to mention Ford, Chrysler, and GM because Nissan did it, Volkswagen's done it, Toyota's done it, and so it's growing leap and bounds, and you have a government who does not protect a worker's right to have independent unions so they can grow their wages, so they can have an economy, so they can buy the products they build. It's not crazy. Think about it. Why are we not fighting Canada? Well, if Canada can do it and the United States can partner up like that, why can't we do it with Mexico? And it's up to our congressional leaders and our politicians and the President of the United States to say that workers' rights must be protected. And I got to tell you, it aggravates me, and I speak of it when I get an opportunity to politicians. Don't tell me about human rights, and don't tell me about Cuba. When you go ahead and are dealing with China, Vietnam, Honduras, it ought to be, if it's just not a good argument for them. And if Mexico was buying as many vehicles as the United States on a percentage level based off of population, we can compete. Because then a worker could really afford the product that they have. So that's why a lot of people say, well, why has not the UAW endorsed? Trade is very important to us. We are not going to endorse a candidate until we have insurances that we are going to have some protection in these trade agreements. The last time we entered into an agreement with the administration and we worked with them on all these side agreements that were supposed to have teeth, protecting labor rights, protecting workers, protecting the environment, was Korea. By the way, the UAW signed on to it. We have already lost 75,000 jobs because of the Korean agreement. Because we don't have fair trade, and corporations often like to taunt the fact that they believe in free trade. Except right now, one company has committed to the fight, and I'm going to recognize them right now because I just thought of it, and that's Ford Manufacturing. So we ought to give them a little round of applause for sticking with it. So when we look at the challenges that we have ahead of us, they haven't changed. The economy has changed, communications have changed, the way we communicate with people, and we're learning a great deal about this. 5 years in a row, the UAW has grown, which is a plus, through organizing, through collective bargaining. All these things are important. And Walter Reuther, when he said that the ballot box is connected to the bread box, is more true today than it was yesterday. And when you look at the challenges we have, it's not just within our union, but it's as society as a whole. This election today that we're facing with probably defines our country more in this election than it has for many, many years. I often told my children that in life, you come to a fork in the road, and you have to make a decision which direction you're going to go. In life, you do that. Many of you have done it. You thought you were going to be going to college, and you decided to go to a factory to work, or you decided to go to college, and you went to college to sign up to be a lawyer, and pretty soon you became a human resource manager. There's forks in the road. Well, that's the way I look at our country today. We have a true defining moment as a nation to determine which direction are we going to go. Are we going to go backwards, or are we going to go forwards? Are we going to go with a candidate that commits to the future for infrastructure, education, really invest in us as a society? Or not? Many of you, I'm like many of you, I worry about not only my kids, but my grandkids. And our organization's no different. When we look at our organization about representing people, it's not just about collective bargaining. I look over and see my good friend Paul Masseron, who was an executive administrator's assistant for Steve Yokich, who lived through many battles. And bargaining is always difficult, but we're not just about bargaining. Our union has always been a social movement. It's about society as a whole. Who are we as a people? What is right? What is a human need? And not what we can extract from people, but how can we lift people up and give them the life of the middle class? That's what the UAW is about. That's who we will always be. And I'm proud of that as a UAW leader, as a UAW member, and as a human being. Thank you very much.